The reality of Arsenal winning multiple honours is really starting to sink in to everyone all over the socials and football fans around the world. I have been saying this for such a long time now that I personally believe this Arsenal team has everything: the character, the mentality, the quality, the squad depth, the belief, the fan base, everything you need. Everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. And right now, Arsenal are in the League Cup final, which I predicted. And I do believe whether they play Newcastle by some miracle or they play Manchester City, which is more likely, I believe either of those teams at Wembley, Arsenal will win. And the League Cup now is the most important game coming up for Arsenal, because when you get that first, it's not the first trophy, but it's the first trophy in such a big time for Arsenal. When you get that over the line, it breeds addiction to winning trophies, and it breeds a mentality. And that is what you need. Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, some of the biggest managers to have ever managed in England say how important the League Cup is, because when you get that over the line, you know how to do it. You've been there, you've seen it, you've wore the T-shirt. And Arsenal went out there yesterday against the Chelsea side, and look, it was a game of chess. It wasn't the most exciting game by any stretch, but it was more of a tactical game. You know, Chelsea kind of a 3 at the back, 5-man midfield of 3 central midfielders to try and prolong the game and stop Arsenal from scoring, whereas Arsenal were comfortable because they didn't need to score, even though they did. But they didn't really need to go out there and do that because of the situation of the tie. They were currently 3-2 up. They had an extra goal advantage. They played Sunderland at the weekend, where they could go 9 points clear before Manchester City before they even kick a ball. And what's ironic is I don't believe off the top of my head that Guardiola has ever won at Anfield in the Premier League. And Liverpool just come off the back of a 4-1 victory against Newcastle. Manchester City have 1 day's less rest. Arsenal ready to go again for the weekend. Right, they get an extra day's rest, 1 day's less rest, going into the weekend. It's a stop-start season. Then they've got a game midweek. I honestly think right now, I'm not going to say Arsenal are going to win the treble. I'm not going to say they're going to win the quadruple. And I know a lot of fans are getting very excited about that. But I do see a world in which Arsenal pick up 2, maybe 3 trophies this season. Talk of the quadruple, it's never been done before. It's not to say that it won't get done, but it's very, very unlikely. You need an element of luck with draws. You need an element of luck with injuries. I'm not saying that Arsenal can't go and do it, but I don't personally think it'll happen. The treble, however, is definitely on. Or a treble at least. Win the League Cup, get the Premier League over the line, and maybe win the FA Cup or the Champions League. But to win all 4 would be absolutely incredible. And do you know what's really, really interesting is I have been saying now for a number of time, and I've been saying this for such a long period now, that when you look at this Arsenal team, everyone criticised them in the summer for going out there and spending huge amounts of money. Then Liverpool dropped huge money, and City have done 500 million in 12 months or 13 months, whatever it may be. But if Arsenal get the Premier League over the line, followed by the League Cup as well, maybe a Champions League or an FA Cup, what are people going to say now? Jurgen Klopp is a fantastic manager as he was, only won 1 Premier League title in his time at Liverpool, in which was, 7 or 8 years? If Arteta wins the league this season, he would have equaled Jurgen Klopp. He would have equaled Antonio Conte. He would have equaled Pellegrini. He would have equaled Carlo Ancelotti. He would have equaled Kenny Dalglish. He would have equaled Mancini. Getting your first league title is very, very difficult. Going and doing it back-to-back is even more difficult. But right now, if Arsenal win the league, go out there and have a big summer. Julian Alvarez is being heavily linked. Nico Williams, Rodrigo, whoever it is may bring in, Jamal Musiala. I believe this could be the start. And I'm not saying right now that Arsenal are going to go and dominate, but Man City with Guardiola leaving at the end of the year, with Chelsea being a little bit far from the title race, Man United, who knows what they're going to do. They could have a situation where they go out there and win multiple honours this season and next year. Make sure you go down, drop a like on the video if you haven't already, and you let me know your thoughts. The road to 100,000 subscribers is well and truly on. Support has been absolutely insane last couple of months, but we are getting very, very close now. We're about 650 away from 89,000. So if you haven't already, please go down, hit that subscribe button, and let me know your thoughts. Now, fixtures is what I want to talk about first with both Man City and Arsenal. We'll start with Arsenal's fixtures. Sunderland at the weekend. I don't want to come out here and disrespect Sunderland, but there is definitely a feel-good factor in the Arsenal camp right now, going out there and beating Leeds, going out there and beating Chelsea. And bearing in mind they did both games without Bukayo Saka, bearing in mind they played yesterday without Martin Odegaard. Gabriel had the armband. They were a defensive, resolute performance. They dug in. They played for the result, and they went out there and they just kept on battling, kept organised, kept their shape, and they won. Sunderland, I do expect them to go out there and get the 3 points, and then get the 3 points against Brentford. Then on the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, well, the missus isn't going to be happy because there's a lot of football on that weekend. But Arsenal are playing against Wigan, which is a favourable fixture. And then after that, they play in the North London derby, which I don't even want to think about that. I don't even want to think about that for a long time. I don't want to think about that until the day, because the thought of them coming to our backyard and winning again, the thought of them coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and getting another win and another clean sheet, I don't want to think about it. And then they play Chelsea at home, a Chelsea side that haven't beaten Arsenal now in 7 meetings. And then they play Brighton and then Everton. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people would predict Arsenal to win out of these 7 games a minimum of 6. I think they'll beat Sunderland. I think they beat Wigan comfortably. I think they beat Brentford comfortably. The North London derby, on paper, they should be beating us, but form goes out the window. I actually think there's a higher chance they beat Chelsea at home than beating us away. Brighton, it's a tough place to go, but I think they will win that. And then it's Everton. And then you get into March when you're getting very, very close to the cup final, which will be played on the 22nd of March. And then you've got, that Wolves game will probably get rescheduled to later this month, maybe. And then you get into April where you've got the international break, and then you've got the, you've got the big game against Manchester City. But right now, when you look at what Arsenal are doing, you look at their last 3 results, everyone was battering them for losing against Manchester United, in which they deserved to lose. It was a very good point. 3 points, for Man United. It was a very good performance. They beat them on every metric. But since then, they've gone out there to Karate Almaty, made it 8 wins out of 8 in the Champions League. They put in a fantastic performance against Leeds United and reduced them to just 1 shot on target. And then they follow it up by beating Chelsea. And when you look at the actual players that weren't in the squad yesterday, from David Raya, Mosquera, Lewis Skelly, Calafiori, Gabriel Jesus, Ben White, Saka was out, Odegaard was out, and Mikel Merino was out. So that's what? First team, 2 first team on the bench, 3 first team in Calafiori, 4 first team in David Raya. You could argue that Gabriel Jesus has been first team. Trossard was his first team that was on the bench. They went out there with a different 11, with their backup goalkeeper, with Madueke coming in, who's the backup, with Martinelli, who him and Trossard heavily rotate, and then Eberechi Eze got his game time, and they went out and beat. Let's be honest, other than Reece James, it was a fully fit and firing Chelsea side that Liam Rosenior has got on good form and has got them into a position now where they certainly should be back in the race for top 4. And then when you look at Manchester City's fixtures, of course, they play tonight. Later on, we will definitely be covering that game against Newcastle United. But they have got 1 winning in, I think, 1 winning, is it 7 games? Drawing to Sunderland, drawing to Brighton, drawing to Chelsea, losing to Manchester United, beating Wolves, and drawing to us. You look at their fixtures. Now, the way they're playing, I don't personally believe they go to Anfield and beat Liverpool. Fulham is a tough game, but they should be beating them. Newcastle United is a tough game. I think he's only won, 2 of his last 19 games against City, Eddie Howe. Leeds United on the last game of the month is going to be very, very tough. Ellen Road is a tough place to go. And then they've got Nottingham Forest. But then when you get into their fixtures going into March/April, where they play West Ham away, they play Chelsea, they play Everton away, they play Arsenal at home, and then they play, going into May, they play Aston Villa. So plus you're going to have Champions League, you're going to have the next round of the Champions League, you're going to have the next round of the FA Cup. So fixtures are going to be very, very important. And what's really, really interesting is Erling Haaland's goal tally is kind of going hand in hand with Manchester City's recent form. Haaland has got 1 goal in his last 7 games. They threw away a 2-goal lead against us. And you look at the fixture tonight, if for whatever reason, if Newcastle score early, I don't trust this City team to defend the lead. I don't trust this City team right now to go out there and actually do the business against this Newcastle United team because they're not in good form. Yes, they may have won 2 cup games against Exeter and Newcastle, but they threw away a lead against us. They lost to Manchester United. They lost to Bodo Glimt. Defensively, Kuzanov and Gahey is nowhere near the level of partnership compared to Vardial and Ruben Diaz. Rodri, he's losing the plot in interviews, calling out referees. Bernardo Silva and Riley as a central midfield partnership, I don't feel is the strongest. Out wide, they're probably the strongest in the league at the moment with Cherki and Semenyo. And Haaland isn't getting clear-cut chances and only got 1 goal in his last 7 games. That being said, this Newcastle United team aren't in great form. They just got absolutely hammered by Liverpool. They lost to Aston Villa at home. They drew to Wolves 0-0 away. They might have beat PSV over the line, but they've got a lot of fixtures this month. They've got to play home and away against Qarabag. They've still got to play Aston Villa away in the cup. They've still got to play us. Still got to play Brentford. Still got to play City in the league. They'll be hoping they can get through to the next round of the Champions League. I don't think they'll go to Villa and beat them in the FA Cup. So, tonight is a huge, huge game for them. And if they score early, who knows? Who knows what this Manchester City side will be like at home? Because certainly in recent weeks, they haven't been anywhere near the level of we've seen of Man City in the last 3 or 4 years. They don't have the mentality. They certainly don't have the quality. They're missing key players. Their leaders aren't stepping up and firing on all cylinders. And I don't think they'll go out and beat Liverpool. That game at Anfield is going to be very, very, very difficult. Liverpool off the back of a 6-0 win against Qarabag, off the back of a 4-0 win against 4-1 win against Newcastle. This Man City side, I don't trust them to go and beat Liverpool. I don't think they will beat Liverpool. 2 back-to-back home wins on the trot. They are certainly firing on all cylinders. And I personally believe that right now that, we're looking at a team that I just don't see it personally. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you check out the Tottenham channel with Daniel Levy potentially selling his stake at the club. There is lots to get through, so make sure you drop a like. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you soon. I'm out.